So I'm at the grocery store the other day, and I see this elderly lady struggling with one of those self-checkout machines. I don't know why I did this, but I thought to myself, I'm gonna help, which is already a red flag, because I can barely work those things myself. I'm the guy who scans a banana, and the machine yells at me about an unexpected item. The banana, the most expected item at a grocery store, but I walk over anyway because I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling like today's the day I'm finally gonna be helpful. And she looks at me and goes, I don't understand this machine. And I'm like, Mom, nobody does. But we're gonna figure this out together. Which in hindsight was a lie. We were not gonna figure it out. So she's got like 3 items: a loaf of bread, some milk, one of those rotisserie chickens. Simple, right? Wrong. Because the first thing she does is try to scan the chicken by holding it up to the camera like she's taking a selfie with it. I'm standing there thinking, that's not how it works, but I respect the effort. So I go, Mom, you gotta use the scanner. And I grab the scanner gun thing, which immediately makes me feel like I work there, which I don't. Now, other people are looking at me like I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. The pressure is on. I scan the chicken. Beep. Success. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like maybe I was born for this. And then the machine goes, place item in the bagging area. So she puts the chicken down. But apparently, she put it down wrong, because the machine starts having a full meltdown. Unexpected item in the bagging area. Please remove item. And I'm like, it's the chicken. We just scanned the chicken. You told us to put it there. And here's the thing about those machines. They don't care. They don't care about your logic. Care that you're trying your best. They just want chaos. So now the machine's frozen. There's a red light flashing above us like we're criminals. And everyone in line behind us is staring. We feel bad for you way. In a why did you choose self-checkout way? So I press the help button, which is the most useless button ever invented, because you know who it calls? An employee who was already having a bad day. They walk over with that look on their face like, what did you do? And I'm like, I didn't do anything. The chicken did this. The employee comes over, scans their little manager card, presses 2 buttons, and the machine's fine. Just like that. And I'm standing there like, what did you just do? Was that magic? Do you have powers? And I just walk away without saying a word. No explanation. Nothing. Just gone. So now we're back to scanning items, and the lady picks up the bread. And instead of scanning it, she just places it directly in the bag. Doesn't scan it. Just puts it in there like it's gonna scan itself through the power of positive thinking. The machine immediately loses its mind again. Unexpected item in the bagging area. And I'm like, ma'am, we gotta scan it first. And she looks at me and goes, why? And honestly, fair question. I don't know why. I don't make the rules. So I scan the bread. The machine accepts it. We're moving, we're flowing, we're a team now. And then she picks up the milk. I can see it in her eyes. She's about to put it in the bag without scanning it. So I go, wait, and I scan the milk. Beep. Perfect. We're on a roll. And then the machine asks, do you have your own bags? And she looks at me and goes, what does that mean? And I realize we've been putting everything in the store's bags this whole time. Now the machine wants to charge her for them. 10 cents each. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but you can see the betrayal in her eyes. She's looking at these bags like they just lied to her. So now we gotta go back and tell the machine, yes, we're using your bags, we'll pay for them. But there's no button for that. There's no what already used the bag's sorry button. So I'm just pressing random things on the screen, hoping something works. The machine's getting mad at me again. Please wait for assistance. And I'm like, we already got assistance. Left. At this point, I've been helping this lady for what feels like an hour. But it's probably been 5 minutes. I'm sweating like actual sweat over a grocery transaction. And she looks at me and goes, this used to be easier. And she's right. It did used to be easier. There used to be people who did this for you. They were good at it, and they didn't make the chicken have an identity crisis. But here's where it gets really good. The machine finally lets us pay. So she pulls out her wallet, and I'm thinking, thank God. And then she pulls out a checkbook at a self-checkout machine. I don't even think the machine knows what to do with that because there's no slot for a check. There's a card reader, there's a cash slot, but there's no check slot. And I'm standing there like, I don't think. And before I can finish, the machine just shuts down. Not an error message, not a freeze, it just turns off. The screen goes black, and we both just stand there staring at it like we broke a very expensive piece of technology, which we probably did. That's when the same employee from before comes back, and they don't even look surprised. They just look tired. They scan their card again, cancel the whole transaction, and just go to a regular register. And we do. We walk away from that machine like it never happened. And you know what the craziest part is? At the regular register, the whole thing took 30 seconds. 30 seconds. The cashier scanned everything, took her check, and we were done. And I'm standing there thinking, what was the point of any of that? But here's what I learned. Never help anyone at a self-checkout. Not because you don't want to be helpful, but because those machines are designed to make you feel stupid. They're designed to test your patience, your sanity, your relationship with rotisserie chicken. And the lady, as we're walking out, she turns to me and goes, thank you for your help. And I wanted to say, Mom, I made everything worse. But instead I just smiled and said, which was another lie, because I'm never doing that again. The foundation of any great comedy story isn't about being the funniest person in the room or having the most outrageous experience. It's about finding that moment where your audience leans forward and thinks, wait, this happened to me too. That's where the magic starts. You're not performing at them, you're inviting them into a shared experience they've already lived, but maybe never put into words. When you start with something relatable, you're essentially saying to your audience, I see you. I know exactly what you've been through. And that recognition is more powerful than any punchline you could write. Think about the grocery store self-checkout scenario. Before you even get to the funny parts, everyone already has an opinion about those machines. They've stood there confused. They've heard that robotic voice say, unexpected item in the bagging area, when they did exactly what it told them to do. They've seen the red light flash above their head like they're committing a crime by buying bananas. So when you bring up that scenario, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from a place where the audience already has emotional investment. They're already nodding along before you've even gotten to the joke. Here's what makes this approach so effective. You're lowering the barrier between you and the audience. They're not watching someone else's wild, unique story that they could never relate to. They're watching their own story being told back to them. That creates an immediate connection. It's the difference between someone saying, I went skydiving and my parachute didn't open, and someone saying, I tried to use the self-checkout and it yelled at me. One is dramatic but distant. The other is mundane but intimately familiar. Comedy lives in that familiar space because that's where people actually live their lives. The brilliance of starting Relatable is that it gives you permission to exaggerate later. Once your audience trusts that you understand their experience, take them on increasingly absurd tangents and they'll follow you. They'll believe the old lady tried to scan the chicken like a selfie because they've already bought into the premise that self-checkout machines are confusing nightmares. You've earned their trust by starting in reality, so now you can stretch that reality into something funnier without losing them. But here's the thing most people miss. Relatable doesn't mean boring. It doesn't mean you pick the most obvious, overdone topic everyone's already heard 1,000 times. It means you find the specific angle within the universal experience that feels fresh. Everyone talks about technology being confusing, but not everyone talks about the specific moment when you realize you're sweating over a grocery transaction, smart, or the exact look an employee gives you when they come to fix your mess for the second time. Those specific observations within the relatable framework are what make people feel like you're reading their mind. When you nail that opening, you find that perfect intersection of, this is my life, and I never thought about it that way. You create momentum, and they're smart. The audience isn't deciding whether to pay attention anymore. They're already locked in, already remembering their own version of this story, already anticipating where you might go next. That anticipation is everything because now they're actively participating in the story with you. They're not passive listeners. They're co-conspirators who know exactly what kind of chaos is about to unfold because they've been there too. Comedy isn't a flat line. It's not about telling people something went wrong and then moving on to the next thing. It's about showing them how one small problem becomes a medium problem, which becomes a disaster, which becomes an absolute catastrophe that nobody could have predicted when things started. That journey from this is fine to how do we get here is where audiences stay glued to your story. They're not just listening anymore. They're watching a train slowly derail in real time. They can't look away because they need to know just how bad it's going to get. Think about how the self-checkout story unfolds. It starts innocent enough. You're just trying to help someone scan 3 items. 3 items. That's nothing. That's supposed to take 90 seconds, but then the chicken gets scanned wrong. Okay, minor hiccup. The machine freaks out about the bagging area. All right? That's annoying, but fixable. Then an employee has to come over. Now it's embarrassing. Then the lady doesn't scan the bread. Now you're questioning everything. Then the milk situation happens. The bag charges appear out of nowhere like a betrayal. Then she pulls out a checkbook. And then the machine just dies. Each step makes you think, surely that's as bad as it gets. And then it gets worse. This escalation works because it mirrors how real life actually spirals out of control. Nothing ever goes wrong all at once. It's always a series of increasingly ridiculous developments that each seem manageable until you look back and realize you're in way over your head. The audience recognizes this pattern from their own lives. They've been in situations where they thought, I've got this under control, and then 5 minutes later, they're wondering how everything went so sideways so fast. That recognition keeps them engaged because they're anticipating the next disaster while simultaneously hoping you'll somehow pull it together. What makes escalation truly effective is that it creates natural suspense in a comedy story. Suspense isn't just for thrillers. In comedy, suspense is the audience wondering how much worse things can possibly get and whether you're going to survive it. Every new complication raises the stakes. At first, you're just trying to help someone check out. Then you're trying to not look incompetent in front of other customers. Then you're trying to avoid breaking an expensive machine. You're trying to escape the situation entirely. The goal keeps shifting, and that shifting keeps the energy alive. But here's what separates good escalation from great escalation. Each new problem should feel both surprising and inevitable. Surprising because the audience didn't see it coming. Inevitable because once it happens, they think, of course, that would happen next. When the lady pulls out the checkbook at a self-checkout machine, it's unexpected. But it's also perfectly logical given everything that's already gone wrong. It's the universe saying, you thought scanning a chicken wrong was your biggest problem. Until you see this. That combination of surprise and logic is what makes people laugh and stay invested. The other crucial element is pacing. You can't rush through the complications, and you can't linger too long on any single one. Each problem needs just enough time to land, create frustration, and then immediately get interrupted by the next problem. It's like juggling. You keep adding balls until the juggler is barely holding on, and the audience is mesmerized watching them try. If you add balls too slowly, it's boring. Too fast, and it's confusing. The rhythm of escalation is what keeps people from checking their phones or scrolling away. There's a massive difference between telling someone the machine didn't work and telling them. She held the chicken up to the camera like she's taking a selfie with it. One version gives your audience information. The other version puts them right there in the grocery store with you, watching this unfold in real time. Specific details aren't just decoration. They're the difference between a story someone forgets in 5 minutes and a story someone retells to their friends the next day. When you get specific, you're painting a picture so vivid that the audience can see it, hear it, and feel exactly what you felt in that moment. Generic language keeps your audience at arm's length. It's like watching a movie through frosted glass. You know something's happening, but you can't quite make out what. Specific details shatter that glass. Instead of saying, the employee looked annoyed, you say, the employee came over with that look on their face like, what did you do? Now, the audience knows exactly what expression you're talking about because they've seen that exact look before, been on the receiving end of it. That specificity triggers their memory and their imagination simultaneously. Suddenly, they're not just listening to your story anymore. They're experiencing it with you. Here's where it gets interesting. Specific details also reveal character and create comedy through observation rather than just through events. When you describe the old lady trying to scan the chicken by holding it up to the camera, you're not just telling people what happened. You're showing them how someone thinks, how they approach technology, how they problem solve. That action tells us everything about her confusion and her earnest attempt to figure things out. It's funnier than any joke you could write because it's behavior, and behavior is inherently more entertaining than exposition. People don't remember facts, they remember images, actions, and moments that feel real. The specificity also makes your story defensible. When you say something vague, like things went wrong, the audience might wonder if you're exaggerating or making it up. But when you say, the machine goes unexpected item in the bagging area, even though we just scanned the chicken and it told us to put it there, that's so specific and so absurd that it has to be true. Nobody would make up something that mundane and infuriating, the details give your story credibility, and that credibility makes the audience trust you enough to follow you through the rest of the chaos. There's an art to choosing which details to include. Not every detail matters. You don't need to describe what color the floor was or what brand of bread she bought unless it's relevant to the comedy. The details you choose should do one of three things: create a visual image, reveal something about character or situation, or set up a punchline. When you mention the rotisserie chicken specifically instead of just food, it matters because that chicken becomes a character in the story. It's the thing that starts all the problems. It's the unexpected villain. If you just said groceries, none of that works. Specific language also creates rhythm in your storytelling. When you use precise words and concrete images, your story moves faster because the audience doesn't have to work to understand what you mean. Brain processes, she held it up like a selfie instantly. If you say, she didn't understand how to use the scanner, their brain has to interpret that. Imagine what that might look like. By the time they've done that work, you've lost momentum. Specificity keeps the story flowing because there's no translation needed between your words and their understanding. The funniest stories aren't just about what happens to you. They're about what you're thinking while it's happening. That internal commentary, that voice in your head that's simultaneously confident and panicking, is where the real comedy lives. When you share that internal dialogue with your audience, you're letting them inside your brain at the exact moment you're making terrible decisions. People love that because it makes you human. And they're smart. It makes you the kind of person who knows they're about to mess something up, but does it anyway because, well, what else are you going to do? That vulnerability mixed with awareness creates an instant connection that pure action alone never could. Think about the moment in the grocery store story when you say, I'm feeling like maybe I was born for this, right after successfully scanning one item. That's not what actually happened. What happened is you scanned a chicken. But what makes it funny is revealing that in your head, you turned that minor success into this inflated sense of competence. You're mocking yourself before the audience even has to. You're showing them that you recognize your own absurdity. And when the machine immediately malfunctions right after that thought, the comedy doubles because the audience saw your confidence and they knew it was misplaced. We're waiting for reality to check you, and it did. This self-awareness works because it eliminates the distance between you and the audience. You're not pretending to be cooler or smarter than you are. You're not the hero of this story. You're the person who thought they could help and instead made everything exponentially worse. But here's the crucial part. You know you made it worse. You're not oblivious. When you say, ma'am, we're going to figure this out together, and then immediately think, which in hindsight was a lie, you're giving the audience permission to laugh at you because you're already laughing at yourself. You're the first person to point out your own failures, which somehow makes you more likable, not less. The internal dialogue also creates layers in your storytelling. There's what you're saying out loud to the old lady, trying to sound helpful and confident. Then there's what you're actually thinking, which is pure chaos and regret. That gap between external performance and internal reality is comedy gold because everyone lives in that gap every single day. Everyone's had moments where they're smiling and saying, no problem, while internally screaming, why did I agree to this? When you articulate that split, you're validating an experience your entire audience shares but rarely discusses. They feel seen, and that feeling keeps them locked into your story. But internal dialogue isn't just about self-deprecation. It's also about showing your thought process in real time, including the exact moment you realize something's going wrong. When you think, and I realize we've been putting everything in the store's bags this whole time, and now the machine wants to charge her for them, you're bringing the audience along on your journey of discovery. They're experiencing that sinking feeling with you. They're learning information at the same pace you learned it, which makes them feel like they're part of the story rather than just observers. That participation is what keeps people from scrolling away. Other powerful element of internal dialogue is that it reveals stakes that might not be obvious from the outside. Externally, this is just a checkout problem. Internally, you're sweating, you're embarrassed, you're aware that everyone in line is judging you. You're wondering how a simple act of kindness turned into a public humiliation. When you bring something back from earlier in your story, something the audience thought was just a throwaway detail, their brain lights up. They feel smart for remembering it. They feel rewarded for paying attention. That's the power of a callback. It's not just a comedic technique. It's a way of telling your audience that every moment matters. You're not just rambling through disconnected events, but building something intentional where all the pieces fit together. Smart when the chicken appears multiple times throughout the grocery store story. It stops being just an item someone's buying, becomes this recurring source of chaos, almost like a cursed object that refuses to cooperate with modern technology. Callbacks work because they create a sense of structure in what might otherwise feel like random chaos. The first time the employee shows up and fixes the machine without explaining anything. It's funny because of their mysterious competence. But when they show up again later, with that same tired expression, not even surprised anymore, it becomes hilarious because now there's a pattern. The audience recognizes the pattern before you even finish describing it. They're already laughing because they know exactly what's about to happen. That anticipation is comedy. You've trained them to expect something, and when you deliver it, they feel the satisfaction of being right while also enjoying the absurdity of the situation repeating itself. The beauty of running gags is that they escalate just like everything else in your story. The first lie you tell is innocent enough. We're going to figure this out together. It's optimistic. It's well-intentioned. But then you keep lying. You tell the lady anytime, at the end, even though you're never helping anyone again. Each lie gets slightly more absurd because the situation keeps proving you wrong, but you keep saying these reassuring things anyway. By the time you get to the final lie, the audience is laughing not just at the words, but at the pattern of false confidence you've established. They're seeing your character trait play out consistently, and consistency in comedy is deeply satisfying. What makes callbacks particularly effective is that they don't require setup in the traditional sense. You're not telling the audience, remember this, it'll be important later. You're just telling the story naturally. When you bring something back, it clicks. The chicken scanning wrong early on seems like just one problem among many. When the entire checkout process keeps revolving around different items causing chaos, the chicken becomes the first domino in a chain reaction. The audience subconsciously tracks these elements, and when you reference them again, there's this moment of recognition that feels almost like solving a puzzle. They get it. Getting it feels good. Running gags also give your story a cohesive identity. The grocery store checkout isn't just a series of random frustrations. It's a story about machines designed to make you feel stupid, about lies told with good intentions, about employees who've seen it all before, about a chicken that somehow became the catalyst for disaster. These recurring elements create thematic unity. Your story memorable because instead of remembering 15 different things that went wrong, the audience remembers the chicken story or the self-checkout nightmare with the employee who kept walking away. The callbacks condense your story into something quotable and shareable. But here's what separates good callbacks from great ones: variation. You can't just repeat the exact same joke. Each time something comes back, it needs to be slightly different. A comedy story without a landing is just a series of funny moments that evaporate the second they're over. But when you end on a universal truth, something everyone instinctively recognizes as accurate, you give your audience something to hold on to. You're not just entertaining them anymore. You're articulating something they've always felt, but never quite put into words. That's when comedy transcends being just funny and becomes memorable. When you say, those machines are designed to make you feel stupid, you're not making a joke. You're stating a fact that everyone who's ever used self-checkout knows in their bones. And that validation, that feeling of wise, exactly, someone finally said it, is more powerful than any punchline. The truth at the end of a story serves as the anchor for everything that came before it. All those escalating problems, all that chaos with the chicken and the employee and the checkbook, it wasn't random. It was all building toward this realization. The audience has been laughing at the individual moments, but when you land on that universal observation, suddenly all those moments connect to a larger point. The story gains meaning retroactively. It's not just about one bad experience at one grocery store. It's about the fundamental absurdity of modern life, where we're expected to do jobs that trained professionals used to do, and then we're made to feel incompetent when we struggle. That's a truth people carry with them long after the laughter fades. What makes this technique especially effective is that it doesn't feel preachy or heavy-handed. You're not giving a lecture about technology or customer service. You're just making an observation that naturally emerges from the story you've told. The audience has already experienced all the evidence. They've seen the machine malfunction. They've watched you sweat over a simple transaction. They've witnessed the employee fix everything in 2 seconds, proving that the system is unnecessarily complicated. So when you state the truth at the end, they're not being told something new. They're having something they already concluded, confirmed by you. That agreement between a storyteller and audience is what creates those moments where people nod along and think, that's exactly right. The ending also works because it shifts perspective slightly. Throughout the story, you're focused on the specific details of what went wrong. But at the end, you zoom out and see the bigger picture. You realize this wasn't about your failure to help or the old lady's confusion with technology. It was about a system that's fundamentally broken, deliberately complicated, designed to frustrate. That shift from personal experience to universal observation is what gives the story weight. It's the difference between I had a bad day and we're all living in a world that doesn't make sense. Here's proof. One is a complaint. The other is comedy with a point of view. But here's where it gets really interesting. The universal truth doesn't have to be profound or philosophical. It can be as simple as acknowledging that you told someone or anytime when you meant never again. That small admission of social dishonesty is something everyone does. We all say polite things we don't mean. We all pretend situations went better than they did. And when you call that out at the end, you're giving the audience permission to laugh at a behavior they participate in constantly, but feel slightly guilty about. So now I avoid eye contact with everyone at the grocery store. If I see someone struggling, I suddenly become very interested in the apples. I'm studying those apples like I'm about to write a dissertation on them, because I learned my lesson. Helping people at self-checkout isn't actually helping. Smart, it's just two confused people being confused together, which is somehow worse than one confused person. You know, what the real kicker is, a week later, I'm back at the same store, and I see the same lady. She's at a regular register this time, smart move, and she sees me and waves, and I panic. I actually hide behind a display of cereal because I'm thinking she's gonna ask me to help her again, and I can't go through that. I can't scan another chicken. I don't have it in me. But as I'm standing there, hiding like a wanted criminal behind a wall of Cheerios, I realized something. That whole experience, as stressful as it was, taught me that sometimes the best way to help people is to not help them. Just let them figure it out, or better yet, let them go to a register where an actual employee who gets paid to deal with this can handle it. Because those people have powers I don't have. They have that little card. They know which buttons to press. They've made peace with the machines. Me, I'm still at war with technology. And the self-checkout machine won that battle. It didn't just win. It destroyed me. It made me sweat. It embarrassed me in front of strangers. It taught me that my confidence is wildly misplaced when it comes to anything with a touch screen. So if you see someone struggling at self-checkout, here's my advice: keep walking. Don't make eye contact. Don't be a hero, because 5 minutes of trying to help will turn into the longest 5 minutes of your life. You'll walk away questioning every decision you've ever made. And that lady, she'll thank you anyway, which somehow makes it worse, because now you have to live with the fact that you made everything harder, and she's grateful for it. That's the mistake, not the helping, the thinking you could actually help. Those machines don't want our help. They want chaos. I'm not giving them the satisfaction anymore.